Human Truth here, and it's time again for Otaku Evolution. It's been a while since I've covered a Hayao Miyazaki film, and I thought I'd go a little further back into his past catalog than last time and talk about the high-flying romantic adventure, Porco Rosso. First, a little history on the setting. The movie takes place in the late 1920s in the area of the Adriatic Sea and the countries around it. Benito Mussolini and his fascist party has taken control of Italy, and the World War I veteran pilot Porco Rosso, a man who's been cursed to be a pig,
A pig man, half pig, half man!
has decidedly abandoned his homeland. He lives as a bounty hunter, taking on tenacious but incompetent sky pirates who rob ships, occasionally visiting a club owned by a longtime friend and potential love interest, Gina. Later in the film, Porco manages to smuggle himself into Italy and to Milan, where his mechanic and engineer friend Mr. Piccolo lives, to have his plane overhauled after it sustained major damage. Here he has to be very careful, as having deserted the Italian Air Force means he's a wanted man within the borders. He meets with a friend of his who's still on the inside.
Man, this movie stinks.
Marco, why don't you come back to the Air Force? I've got influence now. I could work something out.
Thanks for the offer, but I'd rather be a pig than a fascist.
Then you better keep your plane out of the skies. The only way the Italians will let you fly is if you fly for our country.
I bring this up not because politics and history have enormous impacts on the narrative or themes of the film, because they're really more dressing than anything else. But I do find them interesting, especially since Mussolini's fascist ideology emphasized traditional masculinity and gender roles, but there's a part of this movie that defies those things. That is, the role of Theo Piccolo, Mr. Piccolo's granddaughter, and designer of planes. More specifically, Porco's attitude towards her. At first, Porco is none too pleased that somebody he sees as a little girl is helping his mechanic. Mr. Piccolo explains that all the males in the family have gone to find other jobs because of the Depression, and his only helpers are women. It takes a little while, but Porco warms up to Theo when he first sees her competence as a designer and engineer, and later when he sees how brave and resourceful she is. Porco comes to cherish his time with Theo in an almost paternal fashion, but not in a patronizing or merely masculine caretaker way, but in a respectful appreciation for her skills and spirit.
You're a great kid. You know what, Theo? Seeing you makes me wish I'd never given up being human. Now go to sleep.
First tell me a story, then I'll go to sleep.
All right. Here's a winner.
It is Miyazaki's embrace of feminism in a likewise paternal society, his own, that in Japan, that makes Porco's embrace of Theo as an engineer all the more poignant and important to the movie. Theo isn't just good for a woman, she's just good.
It's a great idea, but we've already gone way over budget. We'll see what the client thinks.
Porco?
Would you stop looking at me like that, Theo? Just do what's best.
That's great!
Speaking of women, another noteworthy aspect of the movie is the relationship between Porco and Gina. Gina is obviously taken with Porco. She greets him when he comes into her club, sitting with him as he eats. They commiserate over the death of Gina's latest love, another pilot, just as the others had been. She obviously has a type and is deeply concerned with Porco's well-being. She eventually admits to Curtis, the show-off American ace competing for her affections, that she definitely has feelings for Porco. Apparently they shared some time as children before Porco became a pigman, and she still cherishes it in him deeply.
He left without landing. Well, I guess I lose again.
What? You'd choose that stupid pig over me?
That's right. Love is a little bit more complicated here than it is in America. Falling in love happens to you all the time. So have fun in Hollywood, little boy.
Little boy?
The thing is, though, while Porco might have feelings for Gina, he has a hard time admitting to it completely, because he feels he's unworthy of her. I think he has some survivor's guilt from having lived through the war without being shot down like many of his comrades. So he settled into being a pig because he believes he doesn't deserve any better. It may not even occur to him that she has feelings for him until Curtis mentions it during their final showdown. If there's any failing in the movie, it's the lack of denouement, where there could be a definitive resolution to the romance between Porco and Gina. The movie just sort of stops at some point, and a narration by Theo closes it out without really admitting what happened. I know that the intention is a semi-ambiguous ending where we're meant to think that Porco possibly got together with Gina, but it doesn't really help the element of Porco's self-image. Are we meant to conclude that Porco's feelings about himself were improved merely by defeating Curtis in the battle, or Gina showing up to warn him of the Italian Air Force's arrival? Because I don't get any of that. There's just a rush of events and then, boom, the movie is over. There's a lot more resolution for Theo than there is for Porco and Gina. I almost feel like there should be a sequel that centers around their relationship more. One final thing I'd like to talk about is the character of Curtis, the somewhat pompous American pilot the pirates hired to take out Porco. He and the pirates are the nominal antagonists of the piece, but I just can't bring myself to truly despise or revile him. Aside from being overly amorous and a bit naive in the ways of love, Curtis is not some cruel or vindictive monster, but rather mostly an arrogant windbag who just needs to be taken down a notch. Ultimately, he's not a terrible guy, even agreeing to help Porco draw the Italians away from the people escaping the scene of the fight. Theo even keeps correspondence with him after the whole ordeal once he's back in America. Curtis is definitely a glory chaser and a womanizer, but there's just this sense of goofy cluelessness to him that makes him somewhat lovable. I think Miyazaki is really good at creating antagonists that aren't entirely despicable, even if they're definitely flawed and maybe even conceited. You want Curtis to lose, but you don't want him to die.
Miss Theo, are you quite certain you want to do this?
You should ask him, not me.
These bills are kind of expensive.
No, they're not.
Are you gonna fight or not?
I will gladly fight for the woman that I love.
Good. All right!
Porco Rosso is a beautiful film that really immerses the viewer. I felt pulled into the fun and adventure, the wonder and the humor of the film. It's one of those movies that puts a big wide smile on your face every time you watch it, even if it doesn't always resonate on a complex level. Miyazaki clearly only intended to entertain, and that's what the movie does beautifully. Anyway, I don't want to talk about every little aspect of this movie, because I feel like, unlike a lot of Miyazaki's films, this one doesn't get enough watches, and I want you to go in it with some sense of freshness. It's one of his more underrated features, maybe not Princess Mononoke level, but still quite charming. Yikes, another short one, huh? Well, I get really busy around the holidays, so I don't have time for long videos. Speaking of the holidays, next time is the all-important Christmas video, where I take on the follow-up to my first review of this year. It'll be a real, perpetual dance. An infinite samba. An endless... Nope, lost it. Some kind of long dance, for sure. Until then, see ya!
Okay, everybody ready?
Ready!